Jill here with Sirius Talis Moon. This is Jupiter, our Saturn day. And what's up with Jupiter? Jupiter has been retrograding Cancer, separating from a sextile to Mercury and Lilith. Mercury separated from the own degree conjunction with Lilith, sorry. Thank you. I guess I needed to clear my throat chakra, my third eye chakra. So there is a burning off of the old when it comes to religions. Because Sagittarius has both the moon ruler of Jupiter and Mars, ruler of Venus, Mercury, and Black Moon Lilith. The sun has ingressed into Sagittarius. Now, this is something interesting. I saw two nice ladies that were giving out the Shabbat candles, which, to be very honest, I use for talismans for personal use. and they were talking about that this is a new month of Kislev. Now, as an astrologer, it's always interesting. And I saw a lady that talks about the month of Kislev, and the things that were coming up for me, listening to this lady, with her hair covered and so on, and given this lecture about the new month, she did refer to astrology as well. And one of the things she mentioned was that the people are awakening and taking action. Now, it's very interesting that what came up within me that was quite, the confronting. What about the Talmud that dictates how to traffic babies and women and so on is actually really, really in alignment with what she talked about regarding the month of Kislev. Now, as an astrologer, the sun is entering tropical Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is a Jupiter sign and a fire sign. So Sagittarius is about religion, philosophy, and the spreading fire. The sun here is shedding its light on basically the religious that come to spread themselves onwards to people. And how that creates a confrontation, Mars, or basically a religious conflict. Now, it's very interesting because just as astrologers can predict when people will disagree with astrology, their own, in that case it was Judaic religion, can predict when people are waking up to its own dumbfuckeries. Okay, so they definitely have a grain of truth and a shit ton of dumbfuckery surrounding that grain of truth. And this is a month of purification. Okay, the purification, but this is purification in fire. Sagittarius is a fire sign. Now, one of the things that came up to me as I was using element of fire and water to purify the energy, particularly around those who hack the dreams of people and or the nervous system of people and harass them with rapey stuff. Okay, so this is water and fire that create a friction, and it's almost like electricity. And then I was thinking about the food and the fire that meets the food, not to cook it but to burn it. That's stemming from those rituals of people that were raped so they can no longer eat, and they need to burn off the energy of the rape. Now, the matches that I came to use, my mother fixed my room, and so the matches were at the kitchen, and then I see that this is the Procyon matches. So I'm gonna light another. And the Procyon matches, Procyon is in Cancer where Jupiter is, and it was at the kitchen, which is relating to Cancer that's ruled by the moon. And it was there because my mom fixed the room and she didn't know it's the Procyon matches. So I just find it interesting as an astrologer that all these things come up to burn off the energy of those who are basically raping through nervous system hack, through hacking the dreams of people. The world hunger that creates, because then the food is burned not for food, but to ruin the energy of the rape. And this is why we have the burning of the crops. They send the children and the people that were raped to burn the crops. They rape the children and they send them to burn the crops. They rape the children in their homes and they send them to burn homes. Now, it takes a shit ton of fire um, when it comes to that energy. Okay, it takes a shit ton of fire, um, but also water, because when we have fire, we need to. The way we put out fire is with water, and here's the thing: when they talk about the water, not having enough water, having to pay for the water, basically, when they rape, there's not enough water to put down the fire, and the fire spreads. This is the brink of the edge from Scorpio to Sagittarius. If you can listen to the sound of the fire burning the water. Now, what happens when there's not enough water? Both because they're burning the crops, but they're burning the crops because they raped, which is not enough water to hold space, because the water is polluted. And to purify the water, they would need to burn them, which would evaporate the water, and there would be no place to hold place for, bless you, mom, for the fire to be contained. And then the fire spreads. That's the transition from Scorpio to Sagittarius. The wells dry and the fire spreads, because it's not enough water to put down the fire. And if I try, ooh, that was interesting. And if I try to light a match when the surface is a bit wet, I cannot light the fire. But then with the ignition is transitioning from Pisces to Aries, and that's Saturn. That's about to turn direct, I think, on this very degree already, in a couple of days. And that's the fire of persecution. It's persecution of the religious doctrines and the philosophies that burn people by the guise and under the name of purity. And this is the introduction to what my topic is. So, thanks to my colleague Crasia Tassio, who tells me that she sees how the philosophies and the religions are going to try to aspire for days that only the virgin women bring children because they would be concerned with purity. And this is exactly why they would be persecuted, because purity is about will and consent. Purity is not, okay? And this is where basically they would rape infants, rape children, have marriages, cast the wife away or sacrifice or whatnot, and then the raped would be considered impure, so that they would want the people that were raped to have marriages. Okay, just like when the women, if they are pregnant, they are forced, trying to force the partner to wed them and so on. But that is allowed only because the partner raped. Okay, I'm not talking about the modern form of sperm stealing and so on and so forth. I'm talking about those settlements and societies where purity is seen as the virgin child, basically, because it is a child. And these societies are going to be severely persecuted, some of them even to extinction. Okay? And I talk about, my grandfather's family. That they were living in a small village that sometimes was Ukraine and sometimes was Poland and sometimes was Russia. But if I would grow to that family, very likely they would have this type of state. In Ukraine there is the Uman, and where there's a lot of human trafficking. So I would be expected to either be raped in marriage or be trafficked. Of course, in such society I couldn't have been born, or I wouldn't want to be born. After the war, only my grandfather and his brother survived the camps. He was 40. Of course, the younger children would be better if they wouldn't go through horrible deaths. But for them to die in a world that would not save them from being trafficked and organ harvested was kind of a reset on the lineage that allowed later my mother to make to make it a point that her birthing of child would be from love. And later she also divorced, and she married Dutchman. And her daughter would not agree to marriage. And when there's trafficking societies, It's impossible to actually have happy relationships. Now, for me, a secular person, the topic of purity or virginity or this or that, they never really bothered me, because I just looked at it from perspective of intimacy has to be something that is enjoyable before, during, and after. That means no succubus or incubus. Of course, no rape. That means a sense of embodiment. That means that the economy and the society and the politics and the spirituality need to accommodate for love and for life. Now, those societies that talk about the purity or the virginal child that they see as the virginal bride, and that only they will be able to bring children, they're basically talking about, in the very best cases, trafficking cults. Okay? They tend to also be incestuous. Why? Because when all the children are raped, there's no children left are not raped, and then they rape their own children. And they call it purity. Now, elements, simple logic, okay? Not even talking God's design elements. Rape, okay, is basically creating abnormalities in temperature. And then what happens? Dries the water. Okay, or freezes them. Water, what happens to the crops? Okay, excess water they mold, and then the fire tries to burn the water, and there's no water, then the fire spreads. Water element is associated also with the moon, mainly with the moon. Moon rules people, houses, mothers, fertility, lymph, motherlands. Those are persecuted by the spreading fire, because when this is what happens to the children and the women, there is not enough water to keep the fire from spreading, and so the people are persecuted. And they're persecuted by the fire of religion. Which religion? The same religion that um, the secular believers were defending in the face of persecution, without abolishing the religious scriptures and interpretations that justify the abolition of the water, rape, child trafficking, child marriages, and call it purity. Now, my colleagues, some of them can't say it, okay? Some of them have families. They need to maintain their housing. They need to maintain their income. They can't talk about these things. But they give us clues. The people will care about purity, only women that were pure virginal could bring children. It means what? It means trafficking cults and the guise of religion, religious persecution, and then there's going to be burning down of the people, the monasteries, the houses. Okay, they can't say it. Because that would defy uh, certain things that okay, like the Americans colleagues, they couldn't say it when there was violation of the First Amendment and the journalists would get arrested because they were afraid and they were trying to do their checks and balances. And just like I had to wait 2 years until the UN said genocide so that I could say, yes, this is what the UN calls genocide. Even though 2019 I saw that I was targeted because of my thesis, I went to no-touch torture, is very severe. Was raped and so on, attempts to traffic me already then, and I saw clearly that there would be war with Iran, and that there would be the Israel will have to pay shilumim, particularly shilumim to the Palestinians that would be accused of genocide and will have to pay shilumim to the Palestinians. This is what I saw. And we see that those things are beginning to happen right now. And those that showed me that, I think they also wanted to include me in that plan. They wanted to traffic me. What did they want me to do? I don't know. Maybe they wanted me to burn houses. Maybe they wanted me to give orders, to command orders to kill, masses of people. And they prepare people to do that by rape. It's not just the extortion, it's also the rage on the people that they want to take on the people. People say, yeah, they see themselves as master class and lower class, and okay, if I see myself as really master, and there is, let's say, cockroach in the house, okay, a bit creepy, but you know, I'll call a company to purify the place, make sure I clean the place, and the cockroach knows that this is where their boundaries is, where's mine, and then we share nature together. I don't call all cockroaches and hunt them down and put them into concentration camps and kill them by gas chambers and so on. They're natural creatures. There's no reason for me to do that. Only people that were severely raped and violated, they need to purify the fire of their own, when they were raped, and they need to purify the fire, purify everything in the fire, and then they basically put to fire everything. And electrocute, fire and water is electrocution. It's an electric response. I know this is a tough conversation. Now the Jews saw it as month of Kislev, and the moon is now applying to Mula Nakshatra, in Mula Nakshatra applying to the galactic center, where now the midheaven is conjoining Mars hour. Jupiter in the 8th house and the sun is shedding light on those severe things that happen in humanity from an elemental perspective. By the way, all of this happens as I do begin to pay very careful attention to purify and clean my teeth. People are sexually harassed at the doctors. And then the next step is, of course, that there would be no doctors, as happened to Stalin. Now, I still don't know if this happened to Stalin because he took down the good doctors, or because he took down the bad doctors, and then there were no good doctors. But because Stalin also worked with the dark occult, I think, to harvest energy off of the people, then it's very likely that in his case the no doctors was because the good doctors also were killed. Maybe yes, maybe no. I know the Bolshevik Revolution was funded by Rockefeller. The school, okay, was founded by Rockefeller, who wanted to have a foot into the oil in Russia. Now, there's a discussion about the decline of the Rothschilds and so on. Mspiracy did a nice video. I disagree about the part of where she says it's because they married outside the bloodline or the blood pact. Marrying outside the bloodline is necessary for spiritual growth. If people don't have people that marry outside the bloodline because they forbid to marry outside the bloodline, basically they will have exile. In fact, Maimonides, who is one of the pillars of Jewish philosophy, was writing in exile, and he was both affected by and affecting Sufi Islam culture. But if the Jews were also agreeing to marry outside, not by rape, if by rape, they will have worse than exile, they will have something like Gog and Magog, what happens today. But if not by rape, then marrying outside, it means spiritual growth that is coming more naturally. To the bloodline is actually maintaining, is inherent for the bloodlines, how should I say that? Even if you think about pets, okay? If you want to maintain, let's say, golden retriever, lovely, lovely types of dogs. If we don't inbreed them, if we inbreed them but we don't add other bloodlines that are far enough, eventually there will be no Goldens. Their immune system would be sensitive, they will be liable to diseases and so on and so forth. By the way, that's what gave us the golden doodles. And this is one of the greatest inventions of humanity. People, there is an entire economy that runs around upkeeping of the golden doodle. Hopefully, those who own the golden doodles don't do human trafficking to launder the money. Because unfortunately, some of them probably do. But this was very interesting for me, the shifting from Scorpio to Sagittarius, from the water of the well, bubbling up to the surface, and the purification of the water, and then when the water runs dry by religion that is archaic, okay, because in Scorpio we have this deep contemplation. Then there is a fire burning through. Okay, Scorpio comes with this deep spiritual transformation and then is burning through all the rape in the religion. Okay, Scorpio is a very psychosexual sign, an occultistic sign, and it goes to transmutation. Okay, we think about the fire of transmutation, but this is the water of the well. It's going into the deep, purifying the water, and then burning off all the beliefs, philosophies, and ideologies that were causing the rapey experience that in Scorpio one delves into the deep of to be. Okay, so they come out. Think about it. The person recovers in isolation from rape. Okay, then they go out to society and they see, oh, people, only the pure people will be able to have children. Those people that are virginal. It's like, oh, wait a second. I just did an entire purification, detoxification, I don't know what, to purify my energy from people who attacked my energy as child because they're attacking the light and they wanted the innocent to be raped. Now they're telling me that only the innocent will be able to have children. It means that they are going to do child marriages and that they are going to attack the light. These people need to be burned off. It's the fire of belief, it's the fire of truth, burning through the crops of famine that became crops of famine because of rape. I said what I said. Mercury in Scorpio is not going to be as light as Sagittarius. And Mars is in Sagittarius. So Mars takes action by igniting a fire that spreads. Now the only water that can hold through the fire is very pure water. Water that's not polluted by rape. Now here is the thing. The saying that only the virgins would be able to bring children is saying only the women that weren't raped will be fertile. But is not to say that those women that bring children by rape will have their blood lineages sustained. In fact, very likely they don't even want to. And they would be told that they need to burn off an innocent woman. Basically, that they need to rape a child and do rituals to purify themselves. I remember when Anneke Lucas talked about the fact that there was a famous actress back then, that she was doing a ritual of projecting all of the things that she's been through with the rituals, the rape, the torture, the self-hate, and so on, onto the child that Anneke Lucas was. So to sort of purify herself from the results of what she's been through. And then Anneke would have to transmute that as an adult, not by raping other children or doing the same as that lady did. And the other part of that supposed purification ritual that was done as ritual abuse was that lady, okay. By the way, when I purchased the book by Anneke Lucas, my phone was taken from me. And basically with that woman, she would take the life energy from the child to feel youthful, pure, virginal. Now these rituals can also be done, unfortunately, from afar. Why do I say unfortunately? It's not fortunately. It means that even when they don't have the child physically present, they could do it, unfortunately, with summoning the spirit of the child or something like that. And that is the no-touch, a part of the no-touch torture. A lot of you that are recovering from or learning how to love yourselves, some of you just absorbed from the environment, unloving environment, or people that needed to learn how to love themselves and so on. But some of you had those rituals done on you as children and don't know where is this thing called self-hatred or stuff like that is coming from. And then just as you heal and recover, you see that the people try to force you into self-hatred by projecting all of their hatred on the recovering person. This situation creates burned villages, burned homes, burned societies. It's very, you know the term burnout? Okay, when a person is overworking themselves and they have a burnout, it's a soul burnout, and then does nothing because they rely on the children to hold the space for the impurity of their souls, not for being victims, but for going to attack other children, other people, instead of basically rebelling against their authorities, priesthood, parents, and so on and so forth. And this is why we see such extreme religious violence, extreme fires, events to do with fire, food crops being burned, not for food, not for cooking. And some of these food crops are even moldy, like they don't, it's like dust within. They don't have, because of the famine, they don't have water. This is what I saw in the dream. Men in vehicle, and they seem like, workers and so on. And the head of one of the men became like a cabbage. And then that cabbage exploded and it was dust. It didn't even have water within. It also happens to us through food consumption and so on and so forth. Now, this is the month where people, that is leading up to Christmas, and the month that is leading up to Hanukkah, which is very oil, lights, and so on, but also genocide. They celebrated, I think in Hanukkah they celebrated some destroying of some people. there was also a cheesecake story that the lady, they were under a regime where the women, before they would wed, would need to be raped by the king. And then a lady seduced that king with cheesecake and killed him and poisoned him. So it's also celebration of the purification from rape. Okay, that the rapist is being seduced by cheesecake and poisoned. I was told that by a psychologist that turned religious because she thought it would save her from weird rapey men. Um, but that is, she said she wanted me to be connected with the holidays, the Judaism, and so on. I don't know what business she had to do that as a psychologist, but okay. And so she told me kind of a feminist story about Hanukkah in hope it would bring me closer to religion. And it's kind of like, hey, that's also in the tradition. I'm like, okay, we need to see more of that in that tradition. Okay, so basically, because the white sheet stained with blood celebrating marriage is no different to that, essentially. And here we see this transition from Scorpio to Sagittarius as the burning off of basically the bloodlines to do with the belief of ritual abuse of children under the guise of purity. This is so, and this is the light aspect of Sagittarius that's still there. The light aspect of Sagittarius, a lot of people that have, let's say, Sagittarius 7th house or Jupiter in the 7th house and so on, these are considered the high school sweethearts. Okay, the people that marry their high school sweetheart. Why? Jupiter matures at 16. And Jupiter is also the sweetness in life. It is also, now, if the belief is indeed purified and people are not rapey to one another, so this transition can simply be, the coming of age to marriage, and then children that are just having their high school sweetheart or something like that. If everything is fine, they can actually be a couple and have longevity in their relations. So Sagittarius can also mean finding freedom in relation, and the relationship that is based on good faith, trust, truth, and friendship. So that is the actual purity. Okay, but when something is based on truth, then and people don't have to lie to one another, then they have faith in the world and they have a sense of optimism, expansion. And Jupiter also gives children. Jupiter and Mercury axis are very fertile axes. They're both to do with children. Okay. But here I saw that for that to be, the old type of religions that do child trafficking and child rape, and then trafficking and and call it purity. Those need to be burnt off with the lineages, and only the people that want to exit violence can sustain. Okay, and this can be great disaster because the children in those societies, a lot of them will not live because right now they try to traffic the children, so they try to kill the adults and to separate the children. If those children don't have homes because the previous beliefs were beliefs that the child is impure, okay, once they violated, and that has to be only with marriage, and the marriage makes them pure, and not to rape children makes them pure, because those are attacking on the light. Then these children don't actually have foster homes, and a lot of them will die, so that they will not be trafficked and will not be organ harvested. If you think, surely are you delineating an upcoming Holocaust? I might be. But we must understand that absolutely no one has to die. All it really takes is not to rape children, not to traffic children, not to base economy on trafficking, and then we can stop entire timeline of Holocaust. Okay, absolutely no one has to die. Jupiter has to do with choice, and absolutely no one has to die. All of these deaths, if there would be like Holocaust and mass death and so on, all of these deaths are really something that doesn't need to happen at all. Because all it really takes is like not to rape children, not to justify rape of children by religion, not to rape people, to allow to recover, to honor one another's sovereignty. And those are all steps that people can tend to, and make in their societies, and tend to what has been, because all of this trafficking laundered is also the taxes of people funded through classified project to economic hitmanship that again make people dependent on debt. And who is the most dependent on debt? The farmers worldwide. The housing sector, the very basic of existence. And this is how people are being dissolved of, not their roots and their lineages, but actually the land, the soil, the food, the housing, because they believe that is not coming from within. And this is because their lineages were governed by sorcery that rapes the infant for source energy. This is why we have Talmudic teachings that it's okay to rape infant until age 9, because they would take from these infants, those unregistered births, and project. They would use these infants like the kaparot chicken, okay, like, which is another cruel costume. I had a friend that was coming from Ukraine, and she was following all religions, with Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, and she said she looked into Judaism because she has ancestors Jews, and then she saw this kaparot thing where they murder a chicken, or they do the circumcision. I need to speak, then don't listen. It's going to be everywhere, not just by me, to prevent mass death. And the reason she doesn't take a walk outside, because outside she see all the signs about modesty, as to cover yourself with clothes that when you are raped. Okay, we see how this permeates the homes, the housing, the families, everything moon. Because it was actually my mother, which is moon. Now, Mula Nakshatra is associated with the navel, which is particularly moon. It's creation. But it does conflict with the other navel nakshatras. Okay? Which can cause loss of children, homes, and ideas. Clashing creative energies. No, thank you. So, the important, and again, Jupiter is a positive sign. The important thing is that, A, if the worst thing happens, the world will be better off afterwards. Okay? Women got the right to vote, and women could get way more rights if even at the Me Too, they would talk about this type of sorcery. Now, a lot of women just didn't know. Or they would talk about, the spirit and matter, okay, the hacking into the nervous system and so on and so forth. Some of them, because of the trauma, did not know what happened to them. But some of them were just afraid to sound crazy. And one solution to fearing to sound crazy is to look at the science of the body-mind question, which is what I did. I was also afraid to sound crazy, so I began to look at the sciences, and I began to tell the story of consciousness and lecture within the academia in my own courses. Then, of course, I was targeted. Then I learned astrology, because the astrologers would talk about all these things. So I said, yes, some of them can be dark sorcerers, but at least they have the concepts that in academia they don't even have the ability to talk about the problem in ontological concepts. Okay, so I was coming up with the ontological and epistemic ways, okay, the ontological concept, the way to even name the phenomena. Okay, thank you. So that we can have solutions. Now, and another positive thing is that nothing actually has to happen. There's in Sagittarius, this is where there's more access to choice, because Jupiter rules choice, and this is Jupiter's sun. For example, Saturn in Pisces, Saturn is limit, and Pisces is choice, okay, ruled by Jupiter. So, so Saturn limits choice, but it can also create a more concrete a choice. It can be both a choice that stands the test of time and limitation of choice. But Jupiter, it is where Sagittarius is, usually is where we have choice in our lives. Okay, unless you have like a Uranus, which is it's kind of like I would have to do astrology to tend to the energies of my 10th house, or be rebellious, or do okay, this is all of the above, I know. But my Jupiter is in Saturn sign, so I would have, and I'm in Nitra, so this is where Venus self-value is the one that is important to appease, because the self-value allows more access to choice. But Jupiter in Saturn sign can be limited choice, or dealing with limited choice, or orthodox beliefs. Uranus, rebelling, reforming orthodox beliefs. And I resisted it a lot, because what me to do with that? I'm like, oh, I'm just secular. But in these times, it's necessary to do so. And what it means is that what all people have to do to not be in the timeline of like mass deaths and Holocaust and Gog and Magog and so on is simply not to rape, and also to acknowledge what in their religion, also the secular, with astrology, I had to acknowledge the fact that mostly astrology was taught within Freemasons. Okay, the higher degrees of Freemasons. And I tend to that. Okay, I had to acknowledge Enki often, which it trains astrologers to harm people. I wasn't complying with that, so when I started charging for astrological reading, there were many attempts that at first I thought was to gatekeep or whatnot, And this was because I don't do Emki often. And then what happened? Of course, I was targeted and I had to defend myself using astrology. So I basically sustained through several years of being targeted by astrology as an astrologer. And I do not wish upon my enemies such initiation or such, how should I say that? If other people get certification in astrology, very likely I'm a master of masters, and the people like me are masters of masters. Because we were attacked by that type of sorcery. Now, wait, I'm recording. Thank you. So this is where what we see happening is basically just another chapter now. Because of the cycle of eclipses is associated with story of not the current one, but the previous one, and we're still in the shade of it, with the story of Nineveh. What happened? Nineveh was also like Sodom and Gomorrah, except that unlike Sodom and Gomorrah, which was basically rapey. That's why Sodom and Gomorrah, fell into what it felt like. Even in those scriptures, it's written that those that rape are exiled and they're like it. But they have to fund themselves, and they fund themselves by child trafficking, human trafficking, and the dark sorceries are doing taking the energy of the children, and then masquerade it as if they're actually practicing the scripture, and but even the script, and this is why the scriptures are so conflicted. Okay. However, um, the case for Nineveh is that Nineveh repented. Nineveh wasn't destroyed. Now, we're also in a Genghis Khan type of cycle of eclipses right now, and indeed Mongolia, amongst countries like Iran, Egypt, and so on, is changing the capital city to the ancient capital, the Genghis Khan type times capital. Okay, a lot of people are complaining about corruption and so on, and this is where, yes, Saturn, Mars in my 10th house can also be confrontations with parental figures. So, no, this is a really funny thing. It's like I had pancakes and I'm recording. Um, as like, well, is it tasty? How's the pancakes and so on? I was like, wait a second, I'm recording. Now, um, this cycle of eclipses is indeed very Genghis Khan type of eclipse, where yes, cities can be besieged and conquered, but this is where the caveat is: repent is not just reading more psalm; it's abolishing human trafficking, because the actual ability to preserve ruling, and this has to do both with leaders, but with leaders, what do they lead over? People and land. And the ability to not lose the mandate of the heaven And we saw it from the Ming dynasty that was assassinated, was executed.